All right, let's jump right into this. Imagine a terrifying moment when cosmic order was nearly destroyed by a completely unseen enemy. In this explainer, we're diving deep into an ancient text that details a period of just unimaginable dread. We're talking about the Kalakeya crisis. So, think about this for a second. What actually happens to the universe when the very protectors of its sacred rituals are slaughtered in the dark? It is a pretty chilling premise, right? We are looking at a story that documents the sudden, incredibly violent collapse of foundational systems of protection. Because when the people responsible for maintaining the spiritual balance of the world are quietly eliminated, well, the consequences aren't just local, they're cosmic. Part 1. Monsters in the Deep, the perfect alibi. To really wrap our heads around this crisis, we've got to understand the antagonists. Enter the Kalakeyas. These were a group of furious Daityas, or demons, who were on a highly calculated mission. They completely bypassed open warfare, and instead, they specifically targeted the Munis, the ascetics living quietly in sacred woody retreats. The absolutely crucial point here is that their goal wasn't just murder. These were calculating attackers aiming for total cosmic destruction by severing the world's spiritual lifeline. And they managed to operate with complete impunity. Why? Because they had the ultimate perfect alibi. By day, they were totally inaccessible, hiding softly deep in Varuna's aquatic abode, which is essentially the most impenetrable do not disturb mode ever created. But by night, under the cover of total darkness, they emerged to slaughter. This brilliant yet terrifying dual existence made them an invisible, untouchable threat to humanity. Part 2. The Nighttime Slaughter. Systemic Devastation. Now, the details of these nighttime raids are incredibly grim. We aren't just given vague myths to work with here. We are given precise, chilling crime scenes. 189. That is the exact death toll of Brahmanas and ascetics massacred at just one single location, the asylum of the Vasishtha. Just gone, slaughtered in the dark. You see, this wasn't just random violence. It was a systematic elimination, and it's grounded in hard data. After that horrific massacre at Vasishtha's asylum, they moved straight to the asylum of Chyavana. There, they devoured 100 brahmacharis. These were people who survived on nothing but fruit and roots. Then, they systematically targeted the retreat of Bharadwaja, taking out 20 more subdued souls, ascetics who were living such a frugal existence they lived upon air and water alone. They were specifically hunting down the most peaceful, harmless beings in existence. And man, when the sun finally rose, the survivors were met with a visceral nightmare. Emaciated bodies were left completely drained of flesh and blood, with severed limbs scattered brutally across the ground. The ancient texts actually describe heaps of bones piled up like massive masses of conch shells. But it wasn't just murder. It was a targeted desecration of the sacred. You had shattered ladles, broken jars of clarified butter, and the sacred fires, which were kept with such careful devotion by the ascetics, just completely abandoned and scattered in the dirt. Part 3. A Universe in Chaos, the Collapse of Order. Because of all this destruction, the ancient texts describe the universe becoming entirely cheerless. It was totally destitute of Vedic studies, Vaishots, sacrificial festivals, and religious rites. So why does this matter? Well, the main thing you should take away from this is that the death of the ascetics wasn't just some localized tragedy. It meant the complete suspension of the universe's foundational rituals. The literal spiritual mechanics that kept existence functioning simply stopped. So, how did humanity respond to this massive existential threat? Honestly, with immediate and total panic. Survivors, completely afflicted with fear, fled in all directions. They hid in caverns or literally died just from the sheer terror of the threat. That panic did eventually evolve into a manhunt, as brave, mighty bowmen took up arms to track the Danavas. But it ended in total failure. Because the enemy always retreated to the unreachable depths of the sea during the day, humanity's greatest heroes were forced to just return home, entirely powerless. Part 4. Pleading to the Protector, Escaping a Terrible Fear. Okay, so with the situation officially way beyond human control, the deeply afflicted gods, led by Indra, realized they had to escalate this crisis to the absolute highest authority. They repaired unto the exalted and uncreate Narayana, the unvanquished god of Vaikunta and the legendary slayer of Madhu. The big takeaway here is that when all standard systems fail, even celestial beings have to bow to the ultimate creator and protector. And to make absolutely sure their prayers are heard, The gods basically read out Narayana's epic track record. And what a history it is. I mean, assuming the form of a boar, he physically raised the sunken earth right out of the sea. As a half-man, half-lion, he completely tore apart the ancient and mighty Daitya Hiranyakasipu. He stepped in as a dwarf to exile the unslayable Asura, Vali, from the three worlds, and he defeated the wicked Asura Jambha. They list all these legendary interventions to remind Narayana that he is the universe's ultimate, final safeguard when everyone is backed into a corner. After laying out that mind-blowing history, they deliver this massive, desperate, final plea. They say, protect the worlds, the gods, and Sakra also from a terrible fear. They are literally placing all of their remaining hope right at his feet. It is such a highly dramatic cliffhanger. The universe is cheerless, mortals have failed completely, and now the gods can only beg for salvation. So it leaves us with a huge question. When mortal heroes fail and chaos reigns, what higher powers do we invoke to restore order? It's a myth that really forces us to reflect on what happens when the systems we rely on completely collapse. I hope this deep dive explainer into the Kalakeya crisis sparked your curiosity to uncover exactly how this ancient existential threat ultimately resolves. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.